Good morning. Thank you, Yoram, for the...
Turn it off?
Yeah, you could turn it off. I'm not going to use that. Are you going to use it?
No?
Okay. So, when we speak about music, as Yoram mentioned, cataloging music and hearing the music are two different things. The beauty of a book, of the written words, is that no matter how much time passes since the writing of the word, a reader who knows the language can look at the word and get this message from across time, thousands of years. It's pretty definitely amazing. I think that's what fascinates us with the written word. When we come to music, it gets a little more complicated, because how do you preserve the sound in a way that the listener, we see depictions of musical instruments from thousands of years ago, but we have no idea, no clue how they sounded. So when we come to the question of really preserving and teaching to the next generation the musical traditions, here's the problem that we have. It's the problem of the access to the material and how easily people can learn that material. So for when we talk about Jewish liturgy, the phonoteca, the audio library in Hebrew University, in the National Bet HaSfarim Halomim, in the National University, had collections of recordings that were done in the field by ethnomusicologists starting in the late 1800s. But for many, many years, they were not available for the public. You could go and listen to them at the library, but there was no way for you to play them at home, of course. With the advance of the internet and digital music, this has become a little more easy, more accessible. And maybe one of the venues where you could see it most is the Piyut website, piyut.org, where a lot of these musical traditions are being put online with descriptions. Originally it was only in Hebrew. I suggested at the time that they would at least add some title in English so it will be accessible. But still, you listen to it, you cannot download it, you cannot keep it in your files. It's a little complicated. But to me, if I look at my job in that field, like Haim has mentioned, as a librarian of this music, I want to know how can we make this music accessible to people so they could learn and perpetuate the music. It will be alive hundreds of years from now. So we want to make it accessible. We want to make it easy and practical. So I started a while ago, just as a side project. I decided to record. I was doing concerts of Sephardic music, Iraqi music, and I started a side project just before the Pesach of that past year to record the whole Haggadah according to the Iraqi tradition. So we have a very interesting Haggadah. Everything is sung. Each and every part of the Haggadah is sung, different melodies, some very ancient. And also there's a whole translation to Arabic called Sharh fil Arabi. The whole Haggadah is also sung in Arabic. So before Pesach, I took a couple of hours and I recorded the whole Haggadah. I put it online in an app called Spreaker. It's an annoying name, I know. It's Spreaker, like the combination of to spray and to speak. So it's not it's Spreaker. It's like YouTube for audio. And I put it there, and and I connected to some of the Facebook pages where Iraqis gather. And I was surprised. Within a couple of days, there were 3,000 plays, which meant that people really are connected to it and they want to hear those tunes. So, God willing, I'll continue doing that and maybe make it a little more professional in the future. But for that, I want to just give you a sort of a review of a preview of what is, when we speak about Sephardic music, I'll only speak about Babylonian and Iraqi music. What is the scope of the material that we have at hand? So Iraqi Jews lived in Iraq and Iran. It's the whole continuum. It's hard to divide. Syria, Lebanon. We were all moving around this the Middle Eastern continuum for 25 to 2600 years. So we'll look at the text of the liturgy. The texts range from biblical texts, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, mainly Psalms, but also other parts, through material that was written at the time of the Geonim, to material from the Zohar, published in the 13th century in Spain. Rabbi Najara is a very popular poet in the Iraqi liturgy, lived in 1600 Damascus and Safad. And then up until the 20th century, we still have people who are writing new text, new words, new poems. Among them, the very famous Ben Ish Chaya of Yosef Haim of Baghdad. But also my great-grandfather, Rabbi Yehuda Moshe Yeshua Aftaya, who came from the family who opened the first publishing house in Baghdad in the 1800s. And he wrote a poem that is still used in Iraqi liturgy, where he added a prayer in honor of the mothers, where we have the what is called the Hakafot, seven circles around the Teva on the high holidays that are all for men. Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo. He decided that he was the first egalitarian, I guess, rabbi. I'm proud to follow in his pathways. And he wrote one for Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, with a special emphasis on Rachel that goes about 10 times longer than all the other phrases for all the other personalities. So here we have this, in terms of text, and when the text was written, a wide range of going over maybe 3,000 years of the origin of the text. Come to the music. Where is the music from? So most of this music is anonymous. We don't know who the composers were. There's a belief among a lot of people that we borrowed music from our neighbors, non-Jews of all, pre-Islam, during Islam, and this is true. But it's also true on the other direction. There was cross-fertilization. Jewish and non-Jewish musicians worked and lived together. And I can tell it for myself, I collaborated with many musicians of different cultures and backgrounds. And the music is a language that is like a glue that connects people in an unbelievable way. Once you start playing and singing, all partitions and divisions can come down. So it was also the same thing in the past. There was music that was borrowed from the non-Jews. There was music that was borrowed from the Jewish world to the non-Jewish world. There's Amnon Shiloh is an important researcher on the music of Islam, especially the music of Iraqi Jews, and he shows how in the International Congress of Arabic Music in the 1920s, almost all of the musicians from the Iraqi delegation were Jews, except for the percussionist. So this was the scope of music in Iraq. So we don't know exactly where the music came from, but we have that wide range. Performers, who performed the music? And so that ties also the question, where was the music performed? So music was performed at all places, at all times. There were life cycle rituals, whether it's the Brit Milah, for a baby girl that is born, for a funeral. There are songs for funerals. Some people think it's a new invention, but actually it was an old and ancient practice that disappeared and then reappeared. There were songs that were sung by women. In special occasions, there were songs for the ziyarah, for the pilgrimage to the holy places in Iraq. And so each piece of liturgy or folk song, we have different performers at different settings, from the privacy of the home to the synagogue to journeys, where people perform them on the road as they go to the pilgrimage. Now, we have now the question that is most important is the tradition, the accuracy, right? So when you look at a text, we know that sometimes you can find a text, you can find the Ur text, you know this is the original text, the manuscript from which all other manuscripts originated, and sometimes you don't know if there was ever an original text that was there, was any final editing. This is the famous dispute about the Mishnah and the Tosefta. But when it comes to music, it's very hard to determine was there ever an original tune. There are many different traditions. So I'll give you a couple of examples. In Brooklyn, a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Shimon Hai Aluf, it was an Iraqi rabbi, a good friend of my family, and in a way a disciple of my grandfather. Every time I meet him, he says, "How did your grandfather sing that song?" And I would sing it, and he says, "No, we sing it this way." So here we have the same song. In this case, was a song by Rabbi Najara that goes, "Yehu kemotz of the kemosh." It goes like, "Iyu chemot, ovdei chemot, shel ovdei bel yavo hevel, asher kol ish mislo yamos, ulva lipol yikshor hevel," which seems to be like it's a Turkish tune that Rabbi Sanajah brought with him from Turkey. He says, no, it is sung differently. So here we have my grandfather that I heard directly from, Rabbi Shimon Hayaluf, who's maybe between my grandfather's age and mine, who says, no, it is sung differently. And then when I was a rabbi in LA, I had this experience where one of my children read the Torah, and one of my congregants, who belongs to the large Jewish Iraqi contingency that immigrated to to India, and from there spread all over the Far East. I had in my synagogue in LA people from Burma, Japan, Indonesia, and all over the world. Basically, all countries were represented. Came to me and he says, "Your children," with a heavy Indian accent, he said, "Your children read beautifully, but it is not the accurate tune." So it was interesting, like I'm thinking of how this tune was distorted maybe in India. Now in his mind, this is the original tune. Mine is not the original. Finally, another problem that we have is that sometimes musical tradition, just like manuscripts or books that could be stored in boxes and disappear, if there's only one carrier of that knowledge that did not transmit to the next generation, this could go away. So in my case, my grandfather was a carrier of traditions that were unique to his family. And we've learned from him several songs. One of them, I performed in many places, that became favorite for many, even though they don't come from this background, is on words by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, and unknown Turkish tune, and it's called Yonat Rehokim. Yonat Rehokim Nadeda Ya. And when I spoke to other people, I said, only my family knows this song. But then, a year before my grandfather passed away, it was 72. A year before he passed away, he calls us, and he says, "I want to teach you a song." And he taught us a new song. And I said, how is it possible? I mean, we found the text in older manuscripts, but we never know there's a tune for that. And what if my grandfather would not have taught it to us? It would have disappeared. And it's about Moshe going up to heaven to receive the Torah, and the tune goes like that. Edut Adonai Kehalemunai Nahalu Otam. So I have to conclude, and I'll conclude with that as librarians, I hope that we'll be able to cooperate in the future, those who are in this field, to find ways to preserve, to teach, and to perpetuate, to promulgate this kind of knowledge to others, that they could learn, internalize, and practice it to continue for future generations. Thank you.